That's Nick.
That's Joseph, and today we're here to talk about Vermiglio, the sophomore film directed by Maura Delpero, which just premiered in competition at the 81st Venice Film Festival, where it won the Grand Jury Prize. That's the second place prize at the festival, and has now just received its North American premiere at the Toronto Film Festival, where you saw it.
Yes, and you saw it in Venice.
Yes.
Um, are you familiar with this director's first film?
Maternal, which I believe is 2019, and I did see it. I might have reviewed that. Yeah, I'm familiar with that. It's kind of a similar setup of isolated women and an interloper that kind of interrupts their dysfunctional rhythm. I liked that less than this, which I enjoyed quite a bit.
The director was at the screening I saw, and she was really cute. But what is Vermiglio about? 1944, Vermiglio, a remote mountain village, the arrival of Pietro, a deserter, into the family of the local teacher, and his love for the teacher's eldest daughter will change the course of everyone's life. What is your pull quote?
A cold, austere story about a family of women during the final throes of World War II. Del Toro's languorous pacing suddenly tightens like a noose in the third act, which culminates in a poignant portrait of rebellion and resistance.
Mine is a little less serious, but so am I. Okay. Vermiglio is brilliant, successfully conjuring an art house post-World War II Italian Brady Bunch of sorts.
Oh,
Well, it's very melodramatic, and it did feel like an episode of the Brady Bunch.
it's melodramatic, but there's also like this cold distance to it at first, as because we really it takes a long time to orient ourselves, and I like how exposition comes and go. It's like there's a lot of younger curious children, and it's through their questions that we come to kind of piece together what's happening.
Yes. So the story, like the premise says, it's 1944. The story is kind of told over the course of a year. We're told, or I was told, that it was set over 4 seasons, although I couldn't really tell beyond winter and then when it's sunny. But we can tell from the evolution of some characters' pregnancies that a year has passed.
You can also tell from the musical selection because they're doing the seasonal compositions of Vivaldi.
Oh, well, you would have known that, not me. But so the local teacher, who I thought looked like an Italian Donald Sutherland, who is that?
Caesar, played by Tommaso Ragno, who looks more like a grandfather than a father.
Wow. And his poor wife, who keeps making babies, she looks so like all the life has been drained out of her.
Because it has Adele, yeah.
Anyway, this local teacher in the small village Vermiglio, mid 1940s, post-World War, I mean, World War II is about to end, but he has a whole bunch of kids, and we focus, let's focus on the oldest, Lucia.
Mhm.
So there is this man named Pietro, this very handsome Sicilian man who shows up one day with one of the men from the village, and they deserted the war. So the villagers are kind of looking down on them. In fact, the guy who's from the village, Attilio, I believe his name is, and Pietro are sleeping in like a barn somewhere.
But they're afraid because they don't know if Germans are going to come through or anything. But they've all kind of agreed that they're going to keep it, as a community, going to keep it quiet.
Yeah, it's not as bleak as I made it sound. Like they can still go out and do stuff, but it seems like they're trying to lay low and people are kind of shunning them. But Pietro immediately takes a liking to the oldest daughter, Lucia.
Very beautiful, yes.
Very beautiful. And he gets her pregnant. They get married, and he decides to go home because the war has ended and his family doesn't know that he's even alive. So he decides to make the trek down there. So he'll be gone for a little bit. And of course, his new bride says, please write me to make sure you're okay. Okay, so a lot's happening during this time because the youngest daughter, she's the smart one. And the school teacher explains that he can only afford to send one of his children to like boarding school in the city. And it's probably going to be her because,
Slavia.
huh?
Slavia?
Because she's the smart one and he says she's a lot like me. So he has the most like he's going to get the most bang for his buck out of her. Unfortunately for the middle child, Ada, this is where I'm getting Brady Bunch vibes because it's very Marsha, Marsha, Marsha.
Poor,
Um,
poor Ada.
but the middle daughter, Ada, she's going through a lot because she's super religious, which is in conflict with some of her budding feelings. Because this girl is a lesbian in the making. We see her masturbating behind a wardrobe. And then when she gets a hold of her dad's pornography, it is very clear that she likes breasts and vaginas. And then there's this local lady who's this very seductive, woman who likes to smoke cigarettes and hang out in the barn, who Ada has like become fixated on. But I think also some of the sitcom-y nature of the story is there's a lot of humor to it. Specifically with Ada, she keeps like trying to like punish herself for being like doing these dirty deeds.
She's trying to atone for her sins of masturbation, yes.
And at one point, she says, if I do this again, I will go. Because at first, she goes, if I do it again, I'm going to go sleep like face down in the chicken coop.
Mhm.
And then she's like, well, I did it again. What's my punishment? I'm going to eat chicken poop. And then we see her eat chicken poop. But she can't stop. She can't stop.
Poor
But,
thing, yeah.
and then, I mean, the cutest kid you've ever seen, the youngest son, I think his name is Petrine.
Mhm.
Oh, and you already mentioned this. A lot of the exposition comes from him asking questions, but he is the cutest kid you've ever seen. And he's actually the one who is the nicest to Pietro because the little boy heard a story that Pietro carried his friend, his fellow soldier, like on his shoulders when he was injured. So now when Pietrine first meets the boy, it's kind of a sad scene because the adults ignore him, but the little boy realizes it's him and gets so excited and is talking to him and asks him to carry him on his shoulders. And from that point on, Pietro's kind of ingratiated into the school teacher's family. And the school teacher actually advocates for the soldiers because he's an educated man and recognizes that none of us know what it's like to be a soldier, so we can't really say shit about these two. But a pivotal scene is it's like the end of the school year, and the school teacher is passing out report cards. And of course, his youngest daughter gets like a glowing report card, and he confirms that she will be going to boarding school and make sure that you dot your, what's the saying?
Dot your I's and cross. Yeah.
Cross your T's and dot your I's because those nuns will get you together. And then Ada gets her report card and he goes, well, you are a good student, but you have your limitations and you're really built to be like a housewife. So that's what we're going to do. And of course, she's heartbroken. And then Dino, the oldest son, I believe that's his name, the dad fails him and tells him like, you should spend more time studying and not drinking wine, which of course devastates him. But then if we can't handle even more bad news, that's when we find out that Pietro, Lucia's husband, hasn't written her because he was murdered by his other wife. So this fool is a bigamist, but they make it seem like he really did love Lucia and he assumed that he would never see his wife again. I don't know. They don't have children, so.
Or like a lot of men do, I think they can keep these separate lives going on with women in different towns.
Although I'm a little confused because we're told that the other woman can go see the kids like during her jail time. But then she tells Lucia you're lucky as if she doesn't have kids. So is it that those are not Pietro's kids or?
I thought they were Pietro's, but
Oh, so he really was about to abandon his wife and kids.
or play the field, you know.
Play the field. Yeah, I mean, he seems like a good guy because he's cute and quiet and illiterate because a plot point for him is that he's passing love notes to Lucia before they get married and he's illiterate. So he he's just writing hearts, drawing hearts. But then the school teacher has like adult school, like on the weekends. And at one point, they have an assignment where they have to write a sentence, and then all these adult men have to get up and read what they wrote. And Pietro gets up and says, I want to marry your daughter. And then we cut to the wedding.
Yeah.
But in the end, so after Lucia finds out her husband's dead, she goes into a very deep depression to the point where I was 100% sure she was going to kill her baby and kill herself. It was that bleak.
Yes, that's
And
that's
then but then she doesn't. And then she decides to go to the town where the other woman is. And she finds out that this woman gets to leave every day from like 3 to 5 to go visit her kids. And Lucia shows up. And I was 100% Lucia, 100% Lucia was going to kill that lady. But then the lady recognizes that Lucia is a widow because she's wearing the black bandana. But she doesn't recognize her as her husband's other woman. And the other woman tells Lucia, oh, do you have kids? Lucia says yes. And the other woman says, that's lucky. And that sparks something in Lucia that she immediately runs back to her baby and decides to love it.
and she's left the baby. Ada has gone into the convent and she's left the baby there with her younger sister.
And that's an important plot point because earlier in the film, like earlier when we found out that Pietro had been murdered, some of the women in town were gossiping, saying like, who's going to want her? No one wants a woman who has kids and is a widow. And then she can't work because no one will watch her baby. But luckily for Lucia, her sister, the lesbian, is in a convent and they have a nursery. So Lucia's able to find a job. She has somewhere to take her baby. So the final scene is her kissing her baby goodbye as she goes to work, which for a woman during that time in that place was pretty unique. So it's a happy ending.
Sisters doing it for themselves. Yes.
Yes.
I love in all of those passages you just mentioned. I love starting with her deep depression. I love the shot of her mother Adele, who's had 10 babies, one who died before the one she just had, which was giving me Brenda Fricker and My Left Foot vibes. But she's got both, like her own daughter and her granddaughter at her breast. And she's
Well,
like,
at first, I was like, oh my God, did Lucia have twins? But then I remembered, oh no, she and her mama were pregnant at the same time.
she's like, I can't take care of both of these. And then I love one of the final moments where she goes back to the convent after that interaction where she's told she's lucky and she looks down at the baby and the baby has this huge smile on its
I
face.
know. And I don't have any sort of paternal instincts, but to see a happy baby and then it was smiling so big and it has no teeth, so it's all gums.
Yeah.
My cold heart was like a little iceberg melted. It was cute.
Yeah, it's such an odd experience because especially, for the first hour, you think I've seen so many films like this before. I know exactly what it's doing. And it actually, pulls out the rug from under you in a way that's really sly. And I think the cinematographer has to be credited with some of this as well. Mikhail Krichman, who has photographed most, if not all, of Andrei Zvyagintse's Russian filmmaker's work that I really like. But everything about it, I think, was pretty impressive.
That was what I was going to mention next, is I really like the cinematography, particularly the winter months.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's one shot in particular where I forget who it is. It might be Ada doing dishes at like a local watering hole. And it's like, it looks like green screen. I mean, it's not like it looks cheap, but it probably is green screen. But the backdrop is like the snowy mountains, and she's like on the edge of this cliff, and somehow it's like frozen ice, but somehow there's running water, and she's doing dishes, which made no sense to me, but it looked so cool. But yeah, the opening, I was like, because I knew nothing about this film, and I was like, oh God, this is it's gonna be a bleak, arduous, like dramatic period piece. But actually I was very engaged. I went through a range of emotions, very effective. Speaking of, there are so many good scenes when So the mother, who you already mentioned, had 10 kids. Her newest kid, who's still like a toddler, is very sick. And we get a scene where the doctor is explaining to the husband, that baby's gonna die. And the husband says, well, don't tell her, give her some hope. And then what do we cut to? She has like the local like medicine woman wrapping the baby's head in cabbage, talking about, well, she saved another baby with cabbage, so we'll see. But then that baby dies. But then, of course, somehow this lady's uterus is on 10 because she is pregnant again.
And then when she delivers that baby, the doctor leaves. And he's like, "Gosh, she always has such a hard time delivering."
Oh my God, that scene with her delivering her baby, her 10th baby, was so good because this is after the oldest son, Dino, is upset that his dad failed him. But Dino brings his mom flowers. So all the kids are in the room, like congratulating the mom. And then the father walks in and he has an attitude about the flowers because he's like, you stole those from so and so's garden. And Dino's like, I'm not a thief. Those flowers were growing on our side of the yard and I cut them off. And then the wife goes, you're just mad because after all these damn kids I've had, you aren't the first one to bring me flowers. And he goes, you must have lost your mind or be half crazy from delivering a baby to disrespect me in front of these kids. I was the only one howling in the theater. The writing was very good.
The writing was excellent. I think the title is significant as well because the English translation of the title is vermilion, which is, like a color that's represented. It's, a reddish tint that signifies like passion a lot. And this is just such a cold, bleak world. And it's just a testament, I think, to humanity of, being able to make it through living these kind of living conditions because it also feels like it's of a time even before it's set because they're in the Italian Alps that they know that the war is going on, but they're also very isolated from it. So it's also
Mhm.
a unique kind of World War II story.
Yes. Um, we see just how cold like just the idea of these large families during this time who probably only had this many kids to help with like keeping the house together because there's a point where the youngest daughter clearly needs some affection and this is after this young girl has started her like she's had her first period and the way the mom reacts to her is like she basically throws like some sanitary napkins at her and basically says like, well, when one side gets dirty, just flip it over and walks away.
Yeah.
And then we see the daughter like needing attention from the mom. And she goes, what are you doing just standing there? Like, go get the milk. And then she straps like the milk jug on her back. So yeah, it does feel very cold and bleak in a way, but then it also feels kind of warm and familiar.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because there are moments, because it's been like 10 days since I've seen this, but there are moments where things are going on. They're getting the milk, the washing where it's so tangible. You can smell what that probably was like in
Mhm.
those moments.
Oh, speaking of warm, I thought some of the better moments and the ones where I was laughing in the theater were the sisters sleep together in a room, like in one little like full-size bed. And they are very close. And the lesbian likes to have her younger sister rub feathers on her, like rub her with a feather, which I just thought was so sweet. And they talk very openly the way they whisper is really cute. And then in the other room are the boys. And we get the most from the little boy because he's like the source of a lot of answers to his questions. And then Dino, the oldest boy, has a plot line. The middle boy has nothing to do except during his sister's wedding, they sing a little song for her. But the three boys are in a room. And yeah, the little Pietrine, I just thought his acting, the director did a really good job. However, she was able to get this little boy. I mean, it just felt so natural, his inquisitive nature. And there is a language uh, barrier for me that maybe someone who's a native Italian speaker would say it wasn't as smooth as it could be. But for my ear reading subtitles, it worked very, very well.
I like the girls whispering about what bigamy means, like what happened to Pietro, and I think one of them says oh, you can have two wives, and the other one's like, yeah, you can, but you'll get
Yeah,
murdered.
you'll get murdered. And then when they were clowning him for being illiterate,
Hey, he's romantic.
she's like, it's romantic that he draws because all the girls are educated because their dad educated them. So I found that to be a really cool flourish
Well,
that
when the dad's giving the report cards and he's doing it alphabetically by surname, and then it's like it's all of them in a row.
well, and then the one because he's giving commentary with each report card, and then the one he doesn't even say anything. He just like gives it to him. Okay, I want to talk about the oldest daughter. When I thought for sure she was going to kill her baby because there's a moment where the baby is just screaming on the bed. And, even, I mean, it seems instinctual to want to react to a crying baby. Like, I'm sure as a mother who gave birth, hearing your baby cry sparks something in you. But even like me, it's like, oh God, you hear a baby crying, you want to do something. And so I thought it was very powerful, the scene, because it's all in one shot where you see this big, because the way it's angled, this baby is in like the vastness of this empty bed, and then his mother is off in the corner, and she's just like blank. And the screeching sound of the baby. And then she just gets up and leaves. Like she's just walking down the road like Forrest Gump and ends up at the church because she had sent some letters. And after the film ended, a lot of people at the screening were confused by the letters, like whose letters they were. I assumed that the letters were the letters she wrote to Pietro that he never got.
Yes, that was what I thought. Mhm.
But it's during that visit that the priest says, oh, well, by the way, his other wife, you can find her over here, which I thought was so messy. But before she gets to the church, we see her standing over a waterfall. And it reminded me of that movie we reviewed, The Dry 2. And just like that movie, I was expecting the woman to like attempt suicide and then she doesn't. But I was for sure thinking Lucia was going to jump off that waterfall.
But I think the filmmaking is good enough, is so good, really, that you know what she's thinking. You know,
Yeah, yeah. So it still has the same impact. Um, yeah, there isn't maybe the pacing at times. I'm trying to justify why I'm not giving it a 5 because I did feel like there were moments when I was a little like, okay, like I'm getting a little sleepy here, like, but overwhelmingly, I thought it was brilliant.
I agree. But yes, the first hour, I'd say, I think that's a fair assessment that it's pretty sleepy. And of all the Italian films in competition at this year's Venice Film Festival, I think this was by far, in a way, the best Italian entry. So yeah, it's nice that it got such a noteworthy prize, especially for a sophomore film. So yeah, I have my reasons for not justifying a higher score too, but I did really enjoy it, and this would be something I would watch again.
What would you give Vermiglio?
As I did in my written review, 3.5.
Oh, I don't know why I'm giving higher scores today, but I gave it 4.5 out of 5.
Wow. Okay.
I loved it. I would watch it again. It was very powerful. Um, but that's all. Join us on Patreon and listen to our podcast. Bye.